Well, hello, my parking money friends. I just wanted to say, hope everybody's having a great day, and thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. We got the same, myself and Brian here, just trying to find all of the interesting facts we can in the collector car world. And we had a good couple of videos there from Hilton Head.
That was a good trip.
It was a good trip, very good trip, and we love going down there and love the times that we spend. And the crazy part about it is, Brian, is how many friends that you have, from all the years of doing this.
Right, that you
it's
just
like
run
it's
into
like
and you
yeah, it's like a
haven't
big gathering of all your friends. So.
I've always said it's the cars bring the people together.
That's exactly right.
It's about meeting people.
No question about it. No question about it. My name is Mike Rogers, and I appreciate you joining us today. Of course, with us today is my co-host Brian Barr.
How y'all doing?
With Streetside Classics, and he's been with me through the whole thing here. We also have our friend Steve Sudler from Foreign Cars Italia.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and we really enjoy having you. Enjoy all your stories, and thank you very much for bringing our other guests here. And you guys are great up there, and we appreciate all your help you gave us at Hilton Head.
Yeah, that was fun time.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Some great cars
no
there.
question.
Great
The
people,
backdrop.
like you said.
Backdrop,
The backdrop is always good.
And our other friend that we are making acquaintance here is Bill Riley. Now, we've had some interesting people. Now, one of the things that I decided to start this podcast, and because of all the really cool, interesting people that I've met through the years with different cars and different programs and racing and everything else, and had some really great guys come in here full of knowledge, but I don't know if we've reached the pinnacle yet. Well, I think we've reached the pinnacle now.
We're hanging with a legend.
We were hanging with a bunch of good guys, but now we're hanging with a legend. This is Bill Riley. And Bill's dad, Bob, was a famous aeronautical engineer, famous mechanical engineer, great race car builder. They have Riley Scott chassis through the years. Now it's Riley, just Riley Racing. They do a car in IMSA.
Yeah, we do a couple cars in IMSA. Well, first off, it's great to be here.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it. And then appreciate you having me here, Steve, also dragging me on.
Always.
Yeah, we do some cars in IMSA, both in WeatherTech and in Michelin Pilot Challenge, and we also do an AMG and SRO also. So we stay pretty busy.
Yeah. Well, and of course we're here in the building with Multimatic, and we can't walk Bill around everywhere in the building because Multimatic get a little pissy about it.
They do all the AMG parts out of the other side of that wall. So we visit there quite often, buy AMG parts.
Right.
Yeah, but exactly. I don't think they'd appreciate me walking around.
They might get a little touchy about that. Better not even ask. Probably not a great thing to ask. But one of the reasons that we have Bill here is because of the car that's directly behind me here. You can see up on the wall the picture of Carroll Shelby in 1967 racing the original car, which is in the Ford Museum, which is a $100 million car. That's Steve and I's estimate. Easy $100 million car. A good friend of mine, I'll tell you a great story about that car. A good friend of mine, Matt McSwain, was in Goodwood. He builds race cars, and he was in Goodwood running a car in Goodwood. And Ford had decided to take this car off the top shelf in the Henry Ford Museum and take it and display it in Goodwood, right?
Wow.
Well, they had it in a container underneath the one of the presidents, Dwight D. Eisenhower's limo. Okay.
Yeah.
The crane set the container down too hard. The rack broke inside and dropped the Eisenhower car down on top of this car.
I heard that.
Wow. Did you hear that?
I heard about that.
Well, my friend Matt McSwain is at Goodwood, and Matt, who was on here a few weeks ago, and so a guy calls him up and he asks Matt. He says, "Where are you, man?" He says, well, I'm in Goodwood. He said, dude, I know you're in Goodwood. He said, where are you in Goodwood? He said, well, I'm over here in the pits. And he says, dude, I know you're in the pits at Goodwood. He said, where are you in the pits at Goodwood? So Matt tells him, the guy says, you ain't gonna believe this. He said, but I've got a car you have to help me fix, right? So they get Matt get to this car, and he sees, well, the shock tires had pushed through the body work. I mean, it really messed it up.
Wow.
And $100 million car.
Yeah.
And so they jump in, and everybody that they can find and do anything jump in. It was so. It was like operating on John Kennedy. They were like taking pictures of every pop rivet that they drilled out of the car. I don't know why, but just to make sure that everything went back like it should go.
Right.
And so they got the car to where they could at least push it out and display it. Okay, they couldn't do nothing else with it, but push it out and display it. And the crazy part about it was, Matt told me that Ford was so grateful that he had helped them that day that they gave him a lifetime membership to the Henry Ford Museum.
There you go. Nice. Can't beat that.
And he told me, he said, I went to the Henry Ford Museum, and I said, man, that must have been great. All that stuff in there, all Ford racing, everything. He said, man, you know what was the greatest thing in that museum that I took a picture of and sent it to Ford? And I said, what is that? He said, it was a letter from Clyde Barrow, from Bonnie and Clyde, that said, it was to Henry Ford. It said, dear Mr. Ford, thank you for building the flathead engine because it'll outrun any cop in this part of the country. Flathead V8.
There you go.
That's awesome.
It was from Clyde
stories.
Barrow. Yeah, the stories.
Amazing.
Yeah, but that was interesting. But that was he had an association with that car. Yeah. But anyhow, Bill is his dad Bob was the lead engineer on that car. That car finished 42, I believe it's right, 42 miles ahead of second place. 42 miles ahead of second place. Totally dominated the 1967 Le Mans race with A.J. Foyt and Dan Gurney.
Right.
And of course, there's millions of pictures and video footage and everything like that. But very, 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 very famous car. And so Bill, with all the racing that they do, he decided to build a continuation car of that car, and that's what's sitting right behind me here. And we're gonna get up close to it and look at it here in just a little bit. But what brought you to that conclusion?
Well, I mean that's always been my favorite race car. I grew up.
Me too.
I grew up in Detroit. I was born in '68, so obviously I was -1 when that all happened.
Right.
But my dad was there at Carcraft. He was one of the many engineers there. I mean, he wasn't necessarily the lead, but he was one of the many engineers there. And
now, Carcraft also built the 429 Mustang, right?
Yeah, they built a lot of stuff. And Carcraft was kind of started so that they didn't have to deal with unions. Back then they could get all this stuff done quickly.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Sort of their skunk works.
Yeah, their skunk works, kind of like Pratt and Miller was to GM.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing as it was today, or recently. So, my dad was on the project, and it was always my favorite car because when I was a kid, let's say early '70s, all the toys were J cars or Mark IVs or Mark IIs. Mm-hmm. So those were all my toys were those kind of cars.
Yeah.
So I was always in love with it. Then, being a Detroit kid, you always went to the Henry Ford as a class tour, and then there would be the Mark IV sitting there on the pedestal, the crown jewel of Ford.
Crown jewel, yeah.
So, years went by. I always loved the Mark IVs.
Arguably the most famous race car in existence, I would say.
I think by far the American-made, the most famous
definitely,
one.
because that was the first. Carroll Shelby won Le Mans in '59 as a driver, the first American to win Le Mans. The teams in '66, first, second, and third, had a lot of Americans in it. But there had never been an American-built car with only American drivers win at Le Mans. In 1967 was the first year they did that.
Yeah. So it was, years go past, and a friend of mine, Tony Ave, mentioned that he heard that Mike Teskey might be wanting to sell Carcraft because we knew that Mike Teskey owned Carcraft. And I got together with one of my longtime partners, friends, Jim Matthews, business partner, and Jim's like, I think I'd like to really own that. So we went after it. We bought CarCraft, which came all the drawings and all the IP.
Wow.
So we have all the, this is over in Mooresville, we have all the drawings and everything else of the car, all have CarCraft stamps, some have my dad's name on them that he made, the drawings and so forth.
Wow.
And we just said, well, let's go. So we got access to 4 real cars and, scanned them and looked at them, photographed them, measured rivet lines, make sure we had the right amount of rivets in the chassis. And
Right.
then we just started building the car. It took a while to build to make sure it was perfect. Recast uprights out of magnesium, recast wheels out of magnesium, steering racks.
Wow.
We had to recast the steel brake calipers. Like, we went all out to make sure it was as original as it possibly could be.
So it's,
Yeah,
it's
right.
authentic. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Authentic.
authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my dad would have to walk by, we'd be working really hard on a body line or body seam, and and my dad would walk by and go, the real car wasn't that nice, most of the stuff we're trying to duplicate was done
Thanks,
between,
Dad.
5 p.m. and 2 a.m.,
Yeah, right.
at night, because we worked all hours of the night back then. So you kind of had to take a little set back and go, okay, now we understand why some things look a little rougher than others.
Yeah.
It was, a development project doing stuff,
Yeah.
at the racetrack as fast as they could.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So how similar or dissimilar were the 4 original cars you had a chance to look at?
Well, I think that they were the same but different. The details were different. Whether you call it driver cooling or this this little part or this little duct or this little hatch, because the Holman Moody and Shelby cars, I don't think they communicated very well. They never were good at odds. I know that Shelby wouldn't sell the Holman Moody team Goodyear tires, so that kind of starts the whole
Yeah.
division
Yeah.
from what everybody
Yeah.
says, and on and on. And Holman Moody did a lot of the heavy lifting, kind of thing, along with CarCraft. So to us, it was more like whatever the client would want is what we're going to do. So if you say, I want a 1967 Mario Andretti Sebring winning car, we've seen that car. We've,
Did y'all build that car? Did Bob build that car, or that was a Holman Moody car?
that was a Shelby car also.
That was a Shelby car. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, it was a car. It was a Mark IV.
Right.
So
right.
we kind of do whatever the client would want.
Yeah. The one thing that's important,
Because all the details are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that's important to remember is keep in mind this is 1965, 66, 67, 68. Okay. Holman and Moody was Ford Racing East Coast. Carroll Shelby was Ford Racing West Coast. So, hell, we didn't have the internet. I mean, they'd pick up the phone, and they had really no really good way to transfer, except just dropping something in the mail, transfer any kind of drawings or anything like that. The fax machines were not invented yet. So,
Right.
I mean, it was that was a totally different time now. We think about how easy it is just to put something on the internet and boom, 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 make it happen. But that wasn't like that then.
No, it's a lot of work.
A lot of difference.
Yeah,
A
a lot
lot
of
of difference. Yeah, it's when you look back at what Carroll Shelby and Holman and Moody and really Ford did back in the day, what they accomplished. Oh man, it's over the top when you really put the facts to it.
Yeah, I think that one thing that
And Riley, same deal. Yeah.
The main thing one of the main things they discovered on the Mark IV, and I think on the Mark II also, was there was my dad, along with another engineer at Ford, Klaus Arning. You probably heard of that name, Klaus Arning, but he was a pretty very sharp engineer, mostly vehicle dynamics.
Right.
Well, Ford had a supercomputer at the time, the size of a regular room, and they discovered bump steer. They discovered rear bump steer and how to fix it.
Rear bump steer.
Yeah, and how to fix it. Okay. So the Mark II and the Mark IV handled better than the Ferraris.
So with rear bump steer, since you had no pivot in the wheels, how was it? It
was horrible.
Really? It had more to do with the design of the lower trailing arm.
Yeah,
right?
of all the trailing arms and all that stuff. So they discovered that on the Mark IV project.
Yeah.
And then that made the car handle so much better and drive so much nicer than the Ferraris, which is kind of weird to think the Ford is driving better than the Ferraris.
Well, it drove for 4 straight years they kicked their ass.
Yeah, even if you look at the 71 Le Mans movie with Steve McQueen and some of the cameras mounted to the side of the Ferraris as they're going down, going through some of the corners, you can actually see the bump steer, how bad it was.
How bad it was.
Because even into the 70s, they didn't have it solved yet. Ferrari didn't.
For you folks out there who don't understand bump steering, and there's a tremendous amount of you, I didn't for years and years, but you think about the movement of the chassis or movement of the wheel going up and down over the roughness of the road. It's because of the radiuses of the control arms that will steer that tire, because it'll change the direction of that tire as it goes up in the fender and comes down, and so that's what Steve's talking about. But that's just that's a fascinating deal.
Yeah,
So.
they did a lot of, they had torsional testing also. Another funny thing about that is, we worked a lot for Robert Yates in the 90s.
Oh, really? Really?
Did a lot of work on Davy's cars and then Ernie's cars and then Jared's cars with Doug and Robert.
Yeah.
We were kind of, I guess, did a lot of their engineering with Larry McReynolds.
Yeah.
So they'd send cars up and we'd re-engineer them and send them back. And so it was a fun time in the 90s, because obviously we were successful and all that, and it was great people.
So,
but I remember doing a torsional test on one of Davy's cars, and I ran out. I didn't have the right form to do it. It was a pretty simple form my dad had to fill it out and do the math and all that. And I went and asked him, like, hey, I need a torsional rigidity form. Can you hand me one? He said, oh, I'm out of that one, but I'll give you this one. So I got this torsional rigidity form, and I went and looked at it, and I'm looking at the date at the bottom, and it's like May 23rd, 1968. I go, that's the day I was born. That was my birthday and year. Like, he made this form like when he was in the delivery room, when he was waiting for me to be born. He made this form.
Be right with you, babe.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do the cosine right here, and I'll be right with you. So it's kind of like funny, like how advanced that car actually was back then. And all the stuff they do today. Because later in life, you hear people doing a, torsional rigidity test or doing this with the wheel bearings and all this stuff. And I just kind of roll my eyes thinking to that car, how much of that stuff was done, or people doing a geometry program. And, then you think about that, like, that's from the 60s. So, that stuff all carried over today.
Would you say that time period was just superior engineering from Ford? Ferrari was the standard, but we all know Ferrari was sort of simple in a way that they would approach things. So would you say it's just more engineering?
I think it was more engineering, and I think that it was my dad says it was a pretty dedicated group to beat Ferrari.
Okay.
The movie didn't really show that it was everybody pulling in the right direction. Two things my dad didn't like about the movie. He liked the movie, of course, but he likes movies, so he liked that movie.
Right.
He said, that everybody liked Ken Miles. Everybody liked working with Ken Miles. There wasn't that. Yeah, he might have been rough or harsh, but everybody liked working with him. So you can forget about all that stuff. When they said, "Oh, Ken Miles is going to drive the car," well, that's great. Everybody liked that. And then the guy Leo Bebe was a good guy. Yeah, my dad said he was a nice, decent guy. So he was made to.
They had to go in some drama.
It's a movie.
He said everybody was pulling super hard to win Le Mans because that was a directive. Because at that time, all those guys working for Ford, they liked working for Ford. They liked that, and with the Deuce telling them to beat Ferrari, that was that. And he said the only thing that was similar to my dad would say in his career was working on the Saturn space program. Was the only thing that was similar to everybody really working hard together as a group for a common goal.
So your dad, he worked for NASA as well?
He worked for Chrysler Aerospace, which made the boosters.
I got you. Yeah.
The part that you see like falling off into the ocean. Yeah, that part.
The one that Elon Musk catches in a basket.
Yeah, kind of that. Yeah. It was mostly the part that would fall off into the ocean after we get into orbit.
Right.
So
Yeah. That was crazy.
So it was kind of a pretty big passion project to recreate all of that.
So did you go to school to become an engineer, or you did?
It was pretty clear by my mom I was going to school to get a degree.
Right.
So I have a degree from Purdue.
Oh, okay, nice, very nice. Yeah. So did you branch off into the aeronautics like your dad did?
No, I always was in racing. I knew it. At age 5, I knew I'm going to be in motorsports, and that's that.
But now he had an aeronautics degree too.
He had both mechanical and aeronautical.
Yeah. Because I was reading on the internet the other day, but to get ready for you being here.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the race cars that he built back in the early IMSA days,
Yeah.
he could create so much downforce on the cars that they hadn't even invented a spring yet that was strong enough to hold it up to keep it from scraping.
Absolutely.
Because the air would actually push the car down.
Yeah, we had a test, and everybody was always spouting off, like, just like how much power you have, or this how much downforce you have. Well, we have 8,000 pounds at 200, and wind tunnels are all over the place, and you can always play with what speed versus downforce, because it goes up by the cube and all this stuff. And all I know is we built this Chevrolet Intrepid in 1991. Pratt and Miller built it. We designed it. Wayne Taylor and Tommy Kendall drove it. And I knew we had the most downforce.
Yeah.
I just knew it. And the way I knew it is we had our first test. We were on Goodyears. Everybody was on Goodyears. We blew the sidewalls out.
Oh, Lord.
So Goodyear had to go back and build a new tire for the Intrepid because it had so much downforce.
Wow.
And that's when I know, okay, we have the most downforce. That's it. Because they have to build a tire for our car.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
beat that Jaguar.
Beat that.
They didn't have to build a tire for your car. That kind of thing.
Nah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, and the thing about it is, I mean, you have to go back and look, and there is an old BMW in one of Multimatic's pictures in here that I think they were involved in. It was I can't think of the driver's name, but it was a Parmalat car.
Yeah.
But it had so much downforce. This was in the days when they were building the downforce, and it got so dangerous in Formula One.
Yeah.
That what happens is you've got so much downforce on the car, but then you blow a tire and you die.
Yeah,
because
you're done.
they've got so much adhesion in the corner, and you can overdrive, and suddenly you blow a tire and you just tore down a wall.
Yeah. It was dangerous back then.
Yeah, it was
for
way
sure.
dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, but y'all had some of that in IMSA as well, I guess. Back in the day, right? Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
What has been the most the craziest IMSA car you've seen?
Well, the Intrepid was up there.
Yeah.
Then, I was too young for the Mustang GTP car. I was cleaning wheels at that point.
It was the front engine car.
Front engine car,
front
yeah, and that was a
engine car.
carbon tub in 1983.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
Yeah, that was the first carbon tub. McLaren did a Formula One car that was a carbon tub, but this was the first GT car that was a carbon tub.
Oh, really?
I was with Cotter, and we were, what was the name of the place? We were up in Pennsylvania, and they
Three Dog Garage.
Three Dog. Yep,
Yeah,
Three Dog.
Yeah,
got
they
one
have
up
that car there. We just restored it for them.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
really?
Yeah,
Really?
so it's back up there. They're great people to work with for sure.
Yeah. What was the death of that car was that 2.1 liter motor. Right?
Oh yeah, I mean it blew up all the
Yeah,
time.
it blew up all the time.
All the
and
time.
you were telling me some of the.
Yeah, there was some bad politics involved with
Yeah,
Ford back
yeah,
then, with
yeah.
with Zach Speed, and it was just a mess. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of a shame. But the WSC era of IMSA in the early mid '90s was a lot of fun because we had our shop in Indianapolis, and we were building cars to take, whether it's a Ford V8 or an Oldsmobile V8 or a Chevy V8, and we're going up against Ferrari with a 333 and beating them. And they're beating us. We're going back and forth.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun to be
Yeah.
a shop out of Indianapolis with 20 people in it beating Ferrari. That was pretty
But
cool.
if you think about it, I mean, here you are, your dad was involved with beating Ferrari in the 60s.
Yeah.
And
And
here
then
you
you're
guys
doing
are
it.
beating
Here we are doing it
Ferrari
again.
in the
Yeah,
90s,
exactly.
And both are classic cars.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
The 333 SP is
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
a gorgeous
Exactly.
Ferrari.
Yeah, and then 2022 we ran a Ferrari at Le Mans. Remember
that's
with
right.
it?
Right, we
So it was
did.
kind of
Yeah.
and ran a Ferrari challenge team, which was fun too.
You know what was
So
crazy? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So you were telling us earlier, there's a little story in that, the Riley Oldsmobile.
Yeah, it was pretty cool that we have one of the cars, chassis 004, won Daytona in '96 against Ferrari, and that was the race where Max Pappas was hunting down Wayne Taylor,
Yeah.
and it was kind of dramatic. But we were doing the math like, hey, they can be 4 seconds a lap faster. They're never going to catch us, and if they got close to us, Wayne would just leave
Right.
them. So it was dramatic for TV, but TV
Yeah.
loved it. And then the next race was Sebring 12 hour, and we won that one. And that's the first American car ever to win Daytona and Sebring, and the only American car ever
Only
to win
American.
Daytona and Sebring.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's cool. And it's
Yeah.
sitting right across
And it's
town.
sitting, 3 miles from here. Yeah.
Which goes back to, when you take a look at race cars, what makes a race car so collectible
Yeah.
versus others? You know, is it the success?
Yeah, I mean, it's the stories.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously some stories go along with success. So I mean, obviously you have the J car that won the Mark IV that won Le Mans. You know, is probably for American cars is top, and then you have to start looking at cars that have success. And generally, you know, people collect Fords more. American-built cars, people collect Fords more than anything else. So that's a big issue to or that's a big
because
thing.
of the racing.
Because of the
even
racing,
as
yeah.
strong as General Motors has been in,
Right.
in racing through the years, it still doesn't hold a candle to
Sure.
Ford. Yeah.
No, because if you were to look at that 1996 Mark IV we have, if that would have been a Ford project and a Ford engine car, you know, that'd be quite a bit different.
Yeah.
The collectability of it.
Yeah.
Although, you know, it was an Oldsmobile, had GM's power behind it. You know, Doug Feehan.
Kind of like this one behind, sitting right here behind.
Yeah, like Doug Feehan, who from Corvette fame was a program manager for us back then. So he came to every race and was telling us what to do and what not to do and all that. So I mean, we had like all the right people were involved, but the collectability of it is kind of a bit off just because it's not a Ford.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, when they did this GT back here, the new GT came out
Yeah.
in 17. Doug told us that, you know, that the big deal was to get to Le Mans at the 50-year anniversary of the 1-2-3 finish and do real well. And there's a great story, and I've told it on here before, of Robert saving the day on the V6 engine.
I bet.
And but Doug Yates told me how crucial it was to have the relationship with Ferrari, because Ferrari wanted Ford back to Le Mans as much as Ford wanted to be back to Le Mans because of the
It's the
publicity,
battle. It's
because
the
of the
stories that
publicity,
go
what it
along
was
with
going. And this was way before the Ford v Ferrari movie.
Right.
You know, this was way early.
Yeah.
And,
I ran one of those cars at Le Mans in 19. I ran a Ford GT at Le Mans.
Did you?
For Ben Keating. It was a Wins car.
Yeah,
Purple car. And
Yeah.
but we got disqualified. We won. We were in tech for 32 hours afterwards.
What did it get you on?
Fuel capacity.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, we were, you know,
4 ounces over.
yeah, it was 4 ounces.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It took, you know, 2 gallons to do a lap, but we were 4 ounces over. But we weren't supposed to win. Like we kind of upset everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's
French.
it was a weird deal.
you know, they had the deal. Doug stood right here and told this story. We had a little group of car guys in here, and Doug came over and was talking to everybody, and he told a story about Robert showing up when they were building the V6, and it would last for 18 hours on the dyno. At 18 hours, it'd take a crap. And so you know, this was 2 weeks before Le Mans. And so Robert shows up, and he's 73 years old, got cancer real bad.
Right. Yeah.
And he shows up, and he tells them, you know, shows them what to do on the block to make it stronger. And so Doug and Jeff went to Indianapolis, and Keselowski had won Indianapolis, or in Victory Lane, you know, hooting it up with those guys. And so Doug thought to himself, you know, I need to call that dyno operator and see where we're at. And Doug said when Robert came up with this idea of putting these brass dials into the motor, that the Ford engineers are sitting there on their laptops looking at Doug. That won't work. It won't work. And Doug told him, he said, you need to understand, we're going to at least try it.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't care
Right,
what
right,
you
right.
think.
Yeah,
we're
right,
at least
exactly.
try it. And so Doug calls the dyno operator up and says, man, where we at? And the guy says, you ain't gonna believe this, Doug. He said, we're at 30 hours and we're still making
Wow.
horsepower.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so they go to, and you know, the cool part back there was, I've got the picture there, Robert Yates wearing the Hominy Moody shirt.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, he could very well have been working on a 66 car, because the picture's taken in 67.
I remember being at a Waffle House with Robert because I worked with him
Yeah.
full time for a little while. And I remember being at a Waffle House with Robert after a test and started talking about other stuff. And he said, yeah, I was at home and Moody in 66 and 67. I built a lot of the engines for, you know, for the Mark II and the Mark IV. I'm like, what? What did you do?
Yeah.
One of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
He was
Then
definitely.
he ordered the loaded hash browns.
Yeah, exactly. I think we both did.
Yeah.
So he's
Right.
he's definitely was one of a kind for sure. And I enjoyed my time with him.
So tell us a little bit about this. You know, it was funny this morning. Dustin is standing here. We're trying to get everything ready for the deal. And of course, I'm calling around, getting everybody on FaceTime, and and showing them.
I just stepped out of the shower.
Yeah.
A cup of
Hopefully
Yeah,
it wasn't
right.
FaceTime.
And so I'm showing them the pictures of the car with the poster behind it, and Dustin said, "Well, Dad's making the rounds." And I said, let me tell you something. You don't have John Wayne sitting in your shop and not show people a picture
exactly,
of him.
exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we built so many cars over the years and so many different kinds of cars for different series. But when we got done with this, we're like, whoa, I think this is the coolest thing we've ever built.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something else.
Yeah.
And the crazy part about it, tell the story about the windshield wiper motor.
Oh yeah, the windshield, to make it authentic, the windshield wiper motor's out of a Boeing 707. And they've been grounded for X amount of years, so finding them, we have a stack of them, but finding them's pretty hard. So it's an old cable-driven windshield wiper from way back when, and we had to make an arm, I believe, to make it all work. But yeah, so it's authentic, has that Boeing windshield wiper motor in it.
The crazy part about this car back here is you had all the Carcraft drawings.
Yes.
So I mean, so it is dead on. A guy named Riley built it, who is the son of the guy who built the first one. Right. So that, I mean, your last name to me makes it's kind of like Carol Shelby. I mean, it's your last name means a world to that project.
Yeah, I mean, and it was such a passion project also.
Yeah. Right. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, when you take a look at collectible race cars, I mean, Le Mans cars seem to be the ones that are most collectible. I mean, you go back to the Ferraris before these, and then the Ford GT40 program sort of brings an end to the Ferrari dominance. But wouldn't you say that more of the collectible cars, race cars today, are more sports cars versus open wheel?
Oh yeah, I would think so. I think sports cars, I think there's always that bit of connection where you're more connected to the driver, you're more connected to maybe if I was younger or better, I could get to Le Mans, or I could get to Daytona, of course.
Right.
So I think there's a bit more of a connection. And you look at those cars, they're just sexy looking. I mean, they are good looking cars, and they kind of are, trendsetters on a lot of the styling of cars today too. I mean, and so much, stuff on these cars translates into the cars of the future, especially the Le Mans cars now.
Well, even just the upholstery. How many hot rodders and guys who are building these resto mod vintage things. I just saw one in a 240Z, and they're using the upholstery pattern out of the Ford GT.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's still exclusivity, right? I mean, how many cars did they build original of these cars?
11.
Yeah. So there's
they built 11
exclusivity that you find.
chassis.
Yeah.
And that's a 11's J4s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
11 J chassis. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind in the Ford Ferrari movie, okay, this was the car that Ken Miles was going out to test when he died at the end of the movie.
He got killed in a J car, which was this chassis with a different body on
it. With the bread box basket.
Yep. Yeah. And there were some eerie drawings we uncovered in all our Carcraft stuff. Some crash scene drawings.
Oh, really?
Not pictures, drawings.
Oh.
From what I've seen and heard from everybody, it looks they were testing an automatic transmission at the time.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And funny enough, all the automatics are sitting in that museum in Boulder.
Oh, no kidding.
They are there. They are there. So,
wow.
And it looked like an automatic transmission locked up, and then turned the car pretty violently.
Right
at the highest speed part of Riverside, which was pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's what did it. And then the car came apart pretty hard. And my father said that he died of a burst heart, which would be a tremendous amount of G's to burst your heart.
Right.
And, then the J car kind of got a bad name because it came apart a bit. But, if it stayed together, then there'd been more G's into the driver, and it would have been worse.
Yeah. Right.
So, the car has to come apart to get rid of all the energy and get rid of the G's to the driver. So the car came apart. Then after that, they strengthened the chassis some. Quite a bit. Strengthen the chassis, and there you go.
Sure.
Well, if you remember in the movie, right after the finish of '66, Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles walked off, basically, and Ken Miles talking about the whole honeycomb chassis, which basically was the beginning of the modern race car.
Yeah, I mean, because the aluminum honeycomb chassis on this, I mean, so many great cars were built this way. You know, like the Porsche 962, which probably has the most wins of any sports car around the world, was an aluminum honeycomb chassis also.
Right.
You know, and a lot of Indy cars were in the 70s and 80s, aluminum honeycomb, and 90s, aluminum honeycomb bases.
Yeah. And a bit of roll cage just in to protect the driver, and that was really it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So it was, but this thing is just over the top, and I know you're consigning these and basically building them for people, and this would be as close to being an original Ford GT40 as you can imagine. If you look at this car, and we're going to step back here in a little bit and take a peek of it, but if you look at this car, you know, the formula for these cars, the reason they were called GT40s is because the top of the roof was 40 inches above the ground. And that's what they referred to them as a GT40.
Makes the other two look huge.
Makes the other two look, I mean, these other two back here, that
My dad told me a story that I think his boss, which I believe was Roy Lund at the time, told him, so this wasn't my dad saying this, was his boss, which I think was Roy Lund, saying, I'm tired of the GT40. The Mark IV will be 38 inches tall, and we'll be done with it being a 40. So that's why the Mark IV is never considered a GT40.
Really?
40 inch
So
tall.
that's the first I'd ever heard of that.
You always see people say that's not a GT40, that's a Mark IV. And that was, I think that was Roy Lund saying no.
So this one is 38 inches.
38, but then the gurney bubble makes it 40.
Makes it 40. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're 38.
38. No
Yeah, so that's
kidding.
why, if you type in something, if you took that picture and put it on your Facebook page and say, look at this GT40, then, you're going to get a line of people correcting you. That it's,
Thank God I didn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a Mark IV.
But like you said, the gurney bubble.
Yeah, that'll make it back
up
to 40. Yeah, exactly.
We were talking about toys earlier, and we were just sitting here talking. It popped into my head. And the original Hot Wheels pack was the Ford J car.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the bread wagon. Yeah, and then
the bread
they had
wagon.
obviously AFX had the slot cars with the J car and
Had
the Mark
those too.
IV, and then they had like Sizzlers. Those were like the battery powered little cars, back then. Those were J cars or Mark IVs.
Yeah.
Or Mark IIs.
I'm a tick older than you, and when all those Hot Wheels came out, man, I wish I still had them.
Oh my
Yeah,
God!
exactly.
No kidding. I can remember. I had one of those cases that folded about eight
right.
ways,
Yeah.
full of cars.
Yes, exactly.
Full of cars.
Yep.
Yeah, and then that was, and you think about it. That's the reason that kind of crap right there is the reason we're here.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Talking.
Yours are just full size now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, nuts, very nuts. So your dad and you back in the day, I mean, y'all were at the racetrack, guys.
Oh,
or-
yeah. I mean, I started when I was in high school. I didn't get good grades. I didn't flunk anything. I didn't get good grades either. But I was able to. My senior year, I only had to go to school half a day.
Yeah.
So the second half of the day, I'd go to a company called Protofab, and that was owned by my dad and Gary Pratt and Charlie Seelix. Pratt from Pratt and Miller.
Yeah.
And I would be on the drawing board. And that started when I was 17 in January of '86.
Wow.
So I was a designer for most of the beginning part of it.
Yeah.
And then in the '90s, switched over more to a team manager, engineer, trackside engineer role. So and I kind of still have that role today.
Yeah.
You've been through the era from graphite pencil paper.
Oh yeah.
Through CAD.
Yeah, because funny enough, we just restored. We built the Trans Am car in the mid '90s for Paul Newman. We did a lot of cars for Paul, or the company did, and Three Dog Garage wanted it restored, so they sent it to us. So we had to dig out all the drawings, which we have of that car, and they were all on paper, and a lot of the fabricators and the designers were looking at the drawings, and of the front suspension, and they were all
Kids.
they had my name on it.
Oh.
And it was directed by my dad, of course. He didn't have a problem directing you on kind of like Doug and Robert. He had no problem directing.
Yeah.
So on what was right
Telling
and
you
wrong.
exactly how to
in a
do
great
it.
way, of course. But then the drawings were December 19th, December 20th, December 21st, 23rd, 24th, 26, 27, 28. And they were like, man, you had a great Christmas in 1991, didn't you? Because it was like all right during Christmas, I was drawing all these parts, you know, to get made. So, yeah, so I was doing a lot of graphite drawing back then. A lot of erasing, but also a lot of drawing too.
You know, at what point in your life, your dad's life, did it come to a realization to you that your dad was the famous?
Oh, it was kind of all the way through. I think he designed you know, a lot of Indy cars in the 70s, and I think we're at the Indy 500 in 77, and Gordon Johncock was leading in his new car, a Wildcat, and that was a car my dad designed.
Yeah.
And he was leading maybe 13 laps to go or so, and then it blew up, broke a connecting rod or crank or something. Then AJ Foyt took the lead in the Coyote,
Which was your dad's
which
car.
was another one of my dad's cars. So that he designed a few years earlier. And that was kind of like I was 10 years old.
Yeah,
You know, and here's you're running 1-2 at the Indy 500.
Right,
With
right.
you know, back then, you know, and Steve, you're probably there. I mean, there's three. You know, back then that was a big deal. You know, in the 70s, it was pretty.
was the
pretty-
height.
There's
Yeah.
AJ
300,000
Fords and
people
Johnny
in the
Ruffalo.
stands.
Yeah,
going
yeah,
crazy.
exactly. Yeah,
The
exactly.
legends of Indy were back in that era.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and who could hop in this too? That doesn't
yeah.
happen anymore.
Oh yeah,
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 right,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're running at Le Mans and they're running at Indianapolis.
Yeah,
500,
you got to keep in
Daytona,
mind.
and-
You got to keep in mind this car behind us. AJ Foyt had won Indy that year.
Yep.
Jumps in this car, wins Le Mans, and then he won Daytona, didn't he? Or
Right around there.
Yeah, right around
I
there.
have to say, his 67 Indy 500 win car showed up at CarCraft, and my dad said he walked into work and here's, you know, AJ Foyt's car sitting there, and they said, Bob, we need you to go do all the geometry stuff on this car and get the bump steer out of it. So, you know, the 67 Indy 500 winner, you know, was graced with all the CarCraft knowledge.
Oh, wow.
Because obviously that was a big deal, and then all of a sudden you saw the Ford decal go on the nose of the Coyote, you know, for that because of all the help that CarCraft did.
Oh,
And that was my dad and Klaus Arning.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so really, CarCraft jumping in and helping him out. He gave that credit to
Yeah,
Ford.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, because that was all, you know, it was all.
Oh, did Ford own CarCraft at that point?
You could no, but
Kind of.
there were no non-Ford projects
Right.
there.
Right.
Well, as far as the union was concerned, they didn't own
Yeah,
them.
yeah, exactly. As far as
yeah.
you, yeah, but
Yeah.
it was all Ford. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I don't think I think they had one when they had one customer. That was
Yeah,
it.
got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So now, would CarCraft design the car and engineer it, and then would Shelby and Homa Moody build it?
Well, I think that there was like when we started this project, I went up to Detroit and met with some of the older people from CarCraft that were still there. You know, obviously they're in their 80s and 90s. And one of the gentlemen said that they had a pretty elaborate, it was actually one of the parts guys from CarCraft, a pretty elaborate kit of, you know, the tub, the body, the suspension, whatever 400, 500 line item kit
Yeah.
that they would send to Holman Moody or to Shelby to finish up
build.
into the car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, like they'd mount the body, they'd make the roof, they would do all this. There was another really good fabricator at CarCraft, Ron Fournier, who used to write books, and his son has a fab shop in Detroit now. So he was like the head fabricator, and you know, he was a top line, you know, one of the world's best fabricators, and so they'd make the aluminum roofs and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to remember back in the day, they didn't have CAD designs or
Right.
anything computer
Yeah.
generated. I mean, everything was just basically laid out on a piece of paper. And
Yeah,
that was,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
for
about
sure.
it. And
Or the fabrication tools that we have today, the machineries that we
Oh,
have,
yeah.
they just didn't have
Oh,
back
yeah.
then
Oh, yeah,
to
for
make
sure.
something like that is amazing.
do you think the reason, in your opinion, Bill, do you think the reason that the NASCAR cars have never become a collectible car is because of the how easy it is to produce one, or?
I was always surprised that they didn't. Obviously, you know, you have the cars, the big cars. You know, you have a black number 3 car.
Yeah, right.
But even in that era, let's say in the late '90s, you could find a black number 3 car pretty cheap.
Yeah,
you
right,
could, you know, you could go to their shop and say, "What are you guys getting rid of?" And we're getting rid of that one.
Yeah,
You know, and
right.
they'd sell it to you pretty cheap as a
Yeah,
roller.
yeah.
Same with the 28 car. You know, so I don't know why they haven't ever exploded.
I always
There's
felt
just
like
a
it
lot
was
of 'em.
a lot of
There's
them.
no scarcity when it comes
Because
to
the
those.
damn race shop would have 10 of the same cars.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always thought that it was because it was so hard to get them identified.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you'd have to. A perfect example is that one that Dale Jr. that number 8 Nova that he bought at Barrett Jackson. Rick Hendrick actually bid it off for him, and they were trying to verify if that was the car that his dad had won all those Busch
Yeah.
races in.
Yeah.
And the way they decided was he had a picture of him at 8 years old sitting in the car, and the radio box was slightly tilted.
Interesting.
And the radio box, and so they went out to the car, and sure enough, the pop rivet holes for the radio box was tilted.
There you go.
And that's how they verified that was the original car.
But in like vintage racing and HSR and SVRA for that matter, vintage stock car class is the booming class.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
because the cars, you know, you put a nice seat in them, they're pretty safe. You know, at road course speeds.
Right.
You put in, the engines are pretty affordable, big power. Transmissions are affordable.
Big-
You know,
big-
and-
big brakes.
And if you stick it in the wrong gear and break a gearbox or blow up the engine, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
While in other vintage cars, like let's say you had a 917 or you know a real J car, you know you're going to be pretty careful about hurting this thing.
Right.
And that's kind of the beauty of this car is if you ever had a dream of going out there and running it hard, you could, and then we would just fix it like a normal race car.
Right,
It's not
right.
like it's not like you're racing the Mona Lisa or a piece
Yeah.
of art that you're
Right.
gonna
Right,
destroy.
right.
For the very reason why some guys that have a GTO Ferrari will put a dummy motor in there so
Yeah.
they don't ruin
Right.
the original.
100%.
Right. But you
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
in this car and you can fix it.
And it's
Yeah.
an authentic experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
Because I've seen some of that, you've probably seen it in vintage racing too, is just how much tech are we packing in these old cars?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we update a lot of safety things on these cars just
Yeah.
because, you know, you would be dumb not to. You know, we don't want to see anybody get hurt. So the fuel
Yeah.
cells are very modern. That was actually another thing about the Mark IV. Is that was the first car with fuel cells.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
So what brought that on? I mean, just
Drivers got burned so much.
got burned
Back
so
in the
much.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of why my dad started working with Foyt afterwards. Is Foyt found out my dad designed the fuel cells for
Oh,
that
really?
car.
Your dad designed fuel cells?
Well, he designed the fuel cell. I mean, it was Goodyear rubber made the actual bladder.
Bladders.
But
yeah.
but my dad got assigned to draw it.
Oh,
And,
no kidding.
So
Yeah.
he drew it, and then AJ found that out and said, I want you to do more with me because I don't want to get burned.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I can recall reading a book about Bill Simpson pretty much having the
Yeah.
same effect on the driver's suits.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. He went down the end of pit road in Indianapolis, poured
Set
a bunch of
himself on
gas,
fire.
set himself on fire.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
He
to
had
prove,
it.
prove that he was good.
Yeah, he's a character.
Yeah, I mean, you have people like Bill Simpson, and you have the Hans device. You have these Bill Simpson and the Hans device people. The Downings. They did so much for safety.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh,
on how much they've saved us.
I can remember, when we had the pest control contract on DEI, when Dale got killed at Daytona.
Yeah.
And I can remember, and I was racing sports cars and street stocks at the time, and I can remember how crazy the Hans device went.
Right.
I mean, you
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
get one.
Yeah.
You know,
everyone
but you
wants
had to have one. You damn sure didn't want to
Absolutely.
be around without not having it. And
Absolutely.
there was what, like 3 or 4 drivers.
Tony.
Tony Stewart. Yeah,
Stewart.
it was-
Yeah.
Didn't he wear it at the banquet one time and pulled it off?
That's when he.
Said, oh, it's so comfortable. I forgot I had it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was really-
I was working for NASCAR then, and at the banquet at the Waldorf.
I remember that.
Right.
I remember watching that.
Yeah. And there were so many versions of that stuff too, and that's
Yeah.
the one that. I mean, there were some contraptions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the first I was in IMSA back in the day when Jim Downing, and his I guess his brother-in-law Hubbard, they were when they were inventing it, and the first contraptions were big looking things. And
Yeah.
I would say got done. He kept at it and saved a lot of lives.
Yeah.
A lot of lives. Yeah, he
Yeah,
really did.
for
He
sure.
really did.
So, Bill, your father was obviously very involved in Indy cars.
Yeah.
If you have to take a look at some of the Indy cars from the 70s or 80s, things like that, are there any that stand out that you would say are extremely collectible and valuable today?
Well, I think it'd be connected to the name of the driver that did them, you know, and the name of the team and all that stuff. Like I think, you know, Foreign Cars would be collected and Andretti car would be worth collecting, you know, but there are a lot of oddball Indy cars and oddball IndyCar drivers, which I think you'd stay away from.
Right.
But I think the weird thing about collecting an Indy car per se is like, you know, they're so hard to run and
Right.
you're never going to run them in anger. You know, like you could collect an old stock car or something and run it in anger, or collect
Take that to HSR.
you
for
could
example.
collect an old Trans Am car or an old GT car, and you could run the thing a bit in anger. But you know, an old Indy car, you never would really say, okay, let's go run a plus 200 mile an hour lap at the speedway in this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's kind of why. But I think they're more, to me, an Indy car would be more like, you know, Mario Andretti's my favorite driver, let's say, and I want a piece of wall art for my collection.
Yeah.
I'd say that's when you would go after an Indy
Right.
car.
Because I think Newman Haas sold a lot of their old cars off recently, a couple years ago.
Gary
That were-
Trout up in Indianapolis is
Gary.
building a museum built around significant Indy cars.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Gary's with
Interesting.
Kroger for years. and
Yeah,
years
but I
and
think
years.
the most valuable one out of that collection ended up being a Mario Andretti championship winning.
Yeah, or the
N-
Foyt 77 cars,
Yeah.
the
obviously.
Nigel Mansell car
yeah.
that he drove there
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Newman Haas.
Nigel,
Those
here's a
types of
name I
things
haven't heard in
go.
a while.
Yeah, but yeah, I would see, you know, if it's XYZ driver, that car probably is not that big of a deal.
Right, exactly,
And
exactly. 'Cause,
then,
yeah.
you know, you had Lolas and Marches and things like everyone had them. So this again, scarcity is
You brought up
an issue.
before. It gets up to the accessibility, the relatability, sports cars. We grew up driving sports cars in the street,
Yeah.
Mustangs in the street. You know, how cool is it to
Well, I think this,
think you could do it?
yeah, I think the sports car market too is a bit unique because, you know, you could have a favorite driver and get a sports car he drove. You could have a favorite manufacturer like a Ford or whoever, or you could have a favorite tuner. You know, you could love Pratt and Miller and collect Pratt and Miller cars, or like
Right,
Three Dogs.
right.
I mean, you know, all of a sudden they seem to collect Riley cars. Like they have a lot of cars that me and my father were involved with. So like I think that, and then on top of that they're Ford guys. So like they collect because of the Ford. Then it just happened to be Riley on top of that. So I think the sports car world identifies more with the collector because there's so many avenues they can get aligned with to enjoy the car. You know,
Interesting.
yeah.
You know, I can remember back in the damn IMSA days, the early on IMSA days, one of the fun days of my life, we went out to Charlotte Motor Speedway, me and my brother, and I was about 10 years older than him, and we went out there to watch race, and
That'd have been like 85-ish.
I would say it would have been 85-ish, 80, 82. Ted Field and Danny Ongais were
okay.
Yeah.
it was
It was
when
82.
the
82.
prototypes were just coming out, and,
Yeah,
and
they
they had
had
the
a black Lola T600.
T600s, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were on the front row, and John Paul Jr. was in third, qualified third, second row inside, and they came down that front stretch, and he reached over and turned the knob all the way over for the boost, and he just pulled out past them. They never saw him
That was
again.
John Paul. He was in the 935.
Yeah.
In the 18, the blue and yellow 18.
Yeah.
And
What a
boy, that
beast
was
of a car
a
back
big. Oh my God, what a driver.
Oh, I grew up by Watkins Glen from '74 and through college in '83, and just to be there for the IMSA races, the F1 races, to watch that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
The Momo 935 losing its door going down the backstretch. Nah, they're still racing.
Yeah.
I've got a great book over there from John Morton's.
Oh yeah.
His wife, fiance, I'm not sure what she is, but she did a great book on John Paul Jr.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he was one of my favorites when I was a
Great
kid.
driver,
man.
wasn't
Great driver.
You
So
worked
quiet.
with John Paul, didn't you?
I did not work with. I was there at the time
Okay.
when John Paul was around, but I didn't work with him directly.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
my dad worked with him quite a bit, and he worked for senior and junior. Because before that 935, he had a Corvette, a
Yeah,
big monstrous looking thing,
Yeah.
and that was one of my dad's cars.
Oh,
and
really?
so he engineered for John Paul when he drove that car, John Paul Jr. And my dad, I really enjoyed John Paul because he drove for Dyson in those Mark IIIs in the
Yeah.
mid-90s, and man, he
It
was
was really good in Indy cars as well.
yeah, he was really a nice person.
Was that vet the super vet, that blue and
Yeah.
yellow with the
Yeah.
crazy
It's at
body
Canapa
back
right
then.
now for sale.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to collect the biggest, most outrageous Corvette, that's it. I think it had a 500 cubic inch big block in it,
Yeah.
injected.
Wow.
It's a monster.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
my buddy Matt McSwain is running that car. God, I can't think of the name of it, but it's Corvette. Was running at Daytona in the HSR.
The Spirit of
Spirit of Le Mans, Spirit of Sebring.
One of the Greenwood cars, yeah.
Yeah, Greenwood cars. Yeah. And he was chasing down the guy, the real great Porsche driver from England. I can't think of his name.
You're thumping.
But he was chasing him down, and Matt said he was in the banking, and that thing was like 1,200 horsepower, crazy number. He was in the banking chasing. God, the guy's name will hit me in a minute. But so he was chasing him down, and he's in the banking. He's running probably 170 miles an hour, and he's thinking, he said, I've been about half throttled the whole race. And he says, I think I'll go to 3/4 throttle and run him down. He said, when 3/4 throttle, Sonny's looking at the right side winning. He didn't die.
Yeah, we recently found some drawings of that car.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, because Bob did all the Greenwood cars, we found some original drawings from that.
Yeah.
Wow. The Spirit of Le Mans uses stock control arms in front because it had to.
Yeah,
for the
really.
FIA to run Le Mans.
So the drawings we found was the rear suspension because that was all different.
Okay,
That was all race stuff.
Him and his buddy Steve found the Spirit of Le Mans and the Spirit of Sebring in a couple old trailers.
Wow.
Just the bits and parts and pieces. Took them apart, took it out, bought them, and went in, and Matt went in and totally restored the cars.
Yeah, they're killer.
Yeah.
Crazy cars. Crazy cars.
But is that becoming a bigger business for you then too? Riley is
Oh, for
restoring
sure.
some
I
of these
think
cars.
definitely restoring. We've restored maybe, I don't know how many cars we've restored, but definitely cars that have our history.
Right.
We've restored. We're starting to we're probably going to take on a project of a car we didn't design or have anything to do with to restore. But yeah, we're definitely take those on. Like we have Wally Dallenbach Jr.'s 1986 Trans Am Championship winning car.
Oh yeah.
Protofab Camaro, and we just started the restoration on that.
Okay.
So that's like the next one we're doing. And we did the Mustang GTP car, the front engine car, and then we did that Daytona Sebring winning Mark III.
So now, like this car back here, you can do stuff like that. Like somebody was to find the blue and yellow 18 John Paul car and bring it to you, then y'all just take it
we
back.
take it from there.
Wow.
Yeah, take it from there. Because we have a fab shop, we have assembly shop, fab shop, sub-assembly, carbon shop. Then obviously the race team's all separate. Then we have the design capabilities too. So we have 55 full-time employees now.
Oh wow.
Doing race stuff and restorations.
My car club guy from over here on Brawley went out to your shop, and I didn't get to go that day.
All right.
You owe me a
no problem. No problem.
a tour because I'd
no
love to
problem.
see it. Yeah, absolutely.
You guys want to take on my BMW jump car, champ car?
I don't
I
want
know how much you like those.
Well, the Corvettes that run there.
I know.
They're at the shop
know.
now. And then I did buy 2 E30s for my kids so we can start to racing lemons together.
Okay.
So there's there's an E30 sitting at the shop now, so you have these Daytona, you have that thing sitting next to an old E30, just so you know. I don't think I'll allow any pictures of that. But
we have the ugliest one.
Okay, I don't know. I bought one of the E30s. I bought it from my cousin for $500, and I got ripped off. It's really bad. It's really
Well,
bad.
guys, we're gonna take a look at the J car back here, and take a quick peek through it, and kind of show everybody around and show them how original this thing is. It's
amazing.
It's authentic and it's
Authentic.
bespoke.
It's
I mean,
and
that makes it collectible, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Authentic and bespoke. You can't get any more collectible
Yeah,
for a race
I think
car than that.
collectible too. You get to a certain stage where the car you're collecting is art,
Yes.
Yeah.
and and when we got done with that, we're like, we're just transferred from a vehicle to art.
Yeah.
Because usually the stuff we build are tools.
Yeah.
They're tools to get trophies.
Right.
That's what that is. That
Yeah.
race car
Yeah.
is. That is a tool to get trophies and win the driver's championship.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this one is art.
And coming from the Ferrari world, that is definitely art because Ferraris are art
Yes,
as well.
right.
Even when they
Yeah.
raced in the day, they were art.
That is definitely a piece
This
of
car
art.
is definitely
It's
a piece of art.
it's a valuable, it's a tangible asset. I mean,
Absolutely.
just like what we've been saying all along on everything that we've got is it's a tangible asset and truly a piece of art. So very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna step away and tag on some different microphones and
Take a look.
walk through this thing.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, here we are with the Bill Riley masterpiece. I mean,
It's beautiful.
This is a piece of art. I mean, it truly is a piece of art. Bill, you want to touch on some of the?
So we built it, you know, right at our shop in Mooresville. We have 55 employees, and they're all dedicated to making this as perfect as it can be.
Right.
So we scanned 4 cars and went through it and made it as exact as we could, all the way to the cars painted red, but all the pinstriping is done by hand. We recast brake calipers, recast magnesium wheels, recast suspension parts. Roush up in Livonia, Michigan, built the engine with some original help from some of the original people that were involved at Ford development back then. So
that's cool.
It's all as original as you can get. Had the upholstery duplicated. This is all the way through as original as you can get it. 3,900 rivets in the chassis. 3,900 rivets.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the first things I noticed, was that the fact that it would have been easy to put vinyl on this car.
Yeah.
But to have that hand painted, the stripes and everything, you can see the brush strokes in it.
Wow.
It is absolutely amazing.
Yep, a glass windshield also.
Really?
Is it?
Oh, no kidding. Where did you find the windshield?
Well, Ford made them themselves, you know, back in Detroit, in Dearborn. But there's a company in England that still makes custom glass windshields.
Yeah.
So we had them made there.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Well, that's
Share with our audience here the significance of this little riser.
Oh, the kicker, yeah. Because I always asked, you know, what was this for back in the day, you know, because it has it, you can see it in the poster right there. They're on the cars there.
Oh, yeah.
On the original car. And that was to keep the hot air coming out of the radiator to keep from going into these side intakes for the engine.
Spill
So
fence.
the engine got cold air rather than getting the hot air going around the cockpit into
Just
the
the
engine.
little subtleties of Carroll Shelby.
Yeah, that was Shelby. You know, Phil Remington was in the tunnel when all the Ford engineers were in there doing all the aero work, so it was a big group effort. It was a group effort to beat Ferrari. I mean, it's a shame the film separated that so much.
Yeah.
But it was a huge group effort to win Ferrari.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us about like the headlights here. Where do you source things like that in the headlights to make them look like they were back in the day?
Well, these are from back in the day.
Really?
When we
that's
bought
cool.
Carcraft, it came with quite a few parts, and these are original Marshall lights. That came back in the day. We have a fairly large stash of original parts, and so that's what makes them look original. Those are really
They are the real deal.
Were they Ford parts? What were they back in the?
I saw a list of people that got gifts after the Le Mans win in '66, and I saw people from Marshall on there, and people from other parts of the industry on there, from like Kelsey Hayes or whoever. So it was like they had key partners that they worked with.
Interesting. Yeah, those are really cool.
So you said the brakes on these were they Girlings?
They were Kelsey Hayes.
Kelsey Hayes.
Yeah.
So you just had to they didn't exist, obviously.
No. So it's a 2-piston caliper, iron caliper. So we had to recast that.
Okay.
You know, it'd been an easy route to get an aftermarket caliper and put on it, but we made it original as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And,
Which
and
I
same
think
with the wheels and all that
differentiates
stuff.
you and this car from others out there is that, you know, you didn't put aftermarket brakes that you can get today. You went back and recast. Same thing with the wheels. I mean, those are not an aftermarket wheel.
No,
those are the design that you guys had.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have the original drawings, so therefore we can convert that to CAD to have them, you know, have the tooling made, modern way of making the tooling.
Right.
But then we go ahead and cast them automatic.
Wow.
You want me to lift this engine compartment up?
Yep. So you have to undo the button.
Wow.
Wow. Bundle of snakes.
Yeah. So we make all the headers in-house, all the duct work, and obviously you can see parts of the chassis now. The engine comes from Roush Industries up in Livonia with some of the original people involved. Bob Korn, who was an original at Ford Development back then, was involved.
Yeah.
Moles Nolan was involved before he passed, and then Dennis Korn's the main contact there.
And guys, this was the rule back in the day. They had to carry a spare tire, and they also
luggage.
had to carry a suitcase or a place to put your suitcase. That was the FIA rules. And
that tire had to come out of the car during the race. This had to come out of the car, touch the ground, either be put on or can go back into the spot.
Really?
So like in the pits,
That
Yeah,
was
they'd bounce it and put it right back in.
that was part of the rule.
Yeah, and that's obviously a front, so,
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it'd be lighter.
Wow.
yeah.
It's amazing, just the craftsmanship in it. Like, it's ringing in my head when you said earlier, like your dad
Yeah.
walked by and like, that's too nice.
Yeah,
That's-
Yeah,
yeah,
just
yeah.
art.
When you kind of see like these kind of ductwork done, like that's the way the original cars look. And talking to my father, a lot of that was done, between the hours of 5 p.m. and 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. And just like the air feeds here
Yeah.
coming off the bodywork, it's cool how they made the connection there to where they can still
Yeah.
still pick the hood
And
up.
it kind of like every car was a little different. Holman Moody did stuff differently than Shelby, and then they did them differently again from Sebring to Le Mans. So you really have 4 different kinds of cars, and that's details like that are different on every car. So we just kind of pushed that back to whatever the client wants.
Back in the day, they weren't too concerned about what we would think of it as
Homologation.
collectible.
Yeah.
Right.
60 years later, 70 years later, they built whatever went fast.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. So.
But I think that's true with a lot of different marques back then that made race cars. When Ferrari would make a race car and then turn it into a street car, they were all different. So
Yeah,
not
right.
a 250 GTO would be in a different one, standing next to another one could be completely different on how they were. And it looks like this is the same
Exactly.
principle.
100%.
Wow, very cool.
Yep.
I mean, when you take a look at some of the collectible cars out there, you see some that are pretty raggedy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you take a look at this, and just the way that the welds are, and just the fit and finish is just absolutely beautiful.
Do you think your dad would fuss about this being different than how they were actually built?
Oh, 100%. He wanted to make it better, and we had someone talking to us about, the geometry needs to, some guy said, oh, don't mess with the geometry, Bob, because it was perfect. And my dad said, no, it wasn't perfect because I'm the one that did it. So we could make it better.
It wasn't that great.
Yeah. It was great enough to win Le Mans, but we could have won by more.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Always improving.
Yeah, always improving.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can open up the nose here if you
Yeah,
want.
sure.
to.
Yeah,
Same
please.
kind of fasteners, just right on the side. It just lifts up. Just kind of have to go slow with it, but.
Wow.
Wow, look at that.
So like I was saying earlier, this has the Sebring brake ducts on it, so you can see the big brake ducts,
Big.
big 5-inch hoses.
Right.
For Le Mans, they went to the back side of the radiator, but this is the way the client wanted it. You can see we had to recast the steering rack, had to, remake all the pedals. They're all custom built also, and obviously all the suspension parts we made recast upright. So you can see kind of the steel caliper back in there that we had to recast out of steel.
Yep.
So it really was quite a big labor of love to make it all right. And in the body work, this one's fiberglass, but we can make it out of carbon also if someone wanted a carbon body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But would you want to do that?
No, I think you'd
I
want
don't
to make
think
it.
so.
You'd want to make it like as much like the car in that picture as you could.
That would be me.
Yeah.
I would do that.
And honestly, but then you go sell it down the road, and if it was carbon fiber, then somebody'd go crazy over it. So
Or not.
But it's not
I
authentic.
don't know. That's a
But it's
hard call.
authentic. It's
That's a
bespoke.
hard
Well,
call.
this car has a composite nose, composite deck lid,
Right.
composite doors. The side pods are all aluminum and the roof skin's aluminum.
Yeah.
So, it's a half and half car anyway.
So is this stamped or what is
No, it's hand formed at our
so
shop.
beaten? Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
with English wheel and hand formed. We have, like I said, when you look at the craftsmanship and look at all the details, that's just a result of all the people we have working for us. It's not like I'm the one that came and did this. This is all the fabricators and talent that we have doing.
And I'm fascinated it's a windshield as opposed to a piece of Lexan.
That would have been an easy way out.
Right.
Yep,
Absolutely would have been.
It
Exactly.
would have been
Where-
the most affordable way out too.
Where are the
I
driver's
expect that windshield a little
feet
pricey.
in relation to the front axle?
They're about right here, almost where that pivot pole is.
Okay,
That's
all right.
like the pivot for the brake. For
Okay.
The pedal. So almost in wheel center line. I don't know if that was a rule or not back then.
Yeah. Well, I know the 956, which evolved into the 962, your feet
Yeah,
were
way
ahead
up
of
there.
that. So,
Yeah, because they started putting on bigger and bigger front tires and needed more and more front weight.
yeah.
And yeah.
I like the little sun shield that obviously, or shade for the,
that's the way it was.
gauges. Yeah.
That's the way it was.
Every time I look at something, my jaw drops because there's just another little piece,
Yes.
Well, guys, what this all comes down to over time is a significant vehicle in racing history or automotive history. It essentially becomes a piece of art. And when you can have somebody that has the ties to the original piece, then that makes it only that much better from a collector standpoint. So from a collector standpoint, this is over the top. So we just glad to share it with you today. Bill, thank you so much for coming and spending the time with us. Steve, we really appreciate you.
Always
And,
love to be here.
This is a, you know, I told somebody the other day, I said, when you got John Wayne in here, how you want everybody to know about it?
Exactly.
It's beautiful.
Exactly. I can feel my phone going off from what I
Yeah.
posted on
Everyone's
social
looking at it when they see
media.
it.
But
Which,
you know, this,
follow us on social media, people.
yeah, this is just over the top and such a piece of engineering marvel. You know, it was in 1967. Reproducing that today to me even makes it more of a big deal. So,
For sure.
But again, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on our little trail back through time today, and we hope you like and subscribe, and be sure and comment and share. We'd really appreciate that. And you know, and any questions you've got, you know, please put them in the comments. And you know, any way we'll have a link in there to contact Bill on you know, anybody that might have any interest in any one of these cars. And thank you so much for joining us, and just keep on parking money.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.